Hello and welcome. Very good afternoon. You're watching The Big Story with me, Afrida Rahman Ali. Our top focus is on the Shakti Bill. That's the name of the new bill tabled in the Maharashtra Assembly to bring in stricter provisions and laws against sexual crimes against women and children. Maharashtra's new bill on sexual crimes against women and children tabled in the Assembly today. The Act proposes stricter provisions for stern punishment, including death penalty, life sentence and hefty fines against perpetrators of heinous crimes such as rape and acid attacks. It also gives way for faster investigation and quicker disposal of cases. The bill has been tabled in the ongoing two-day winter session amid stiff opposition from various NGOs, activists, lawyers, as well as political parties. My colleague Santhya Gora is joining us live to tell us what happened in the Assembly session today when the bill was tabled. Santhya, tell us more about what are the points raised for and against the bill and what action did we witness, because this already had created quite a buzz and the opposition was up in arms against some of the provisions. But take us through what happened in the Assembly session when the Shakti Bill was tabled.
So, Frida, the discussion on the bill is yet to take place. It's a two-day session we are talking about, and today the first half was dedicated for the condolences, the prayers of those who lost their lives recently. Talking about the opposition, yes, you are right. Opposition is opposing the bill, and it's not just opposition, Frida. There are many NGOs working for women and children, and many other organizations which work for welfare of children and women in the state are opposing this particular bill. And if we talk about them pointer by pointer, first pointer is death penalty. That's one. That's the topmost pointer when it comes to the bone of contention here. So this particular bill is talking about the provision of death penalty for not just the rarest of the rare cases, but for heinous crimes like rapes, acid attacks, and crimes against children. That's that one thing which is being opposed, and those who are opposing are mentioning that how this is actually going to lead to the culprits also ending up murdering the victims so that they are not traced. By the investigating agencies. Afrida, second point is about that one thing where those who are opposing are mentioning that, because this bill also talks about the fact that how if police will find that the complainant actually filed a false complaint and it was motivated with an intention to malign the image of the accused, in that case the complainant can be punished for up to 1 year along with the fine. To that, those who are opposing are mentioning that anyway it's extremely difficult for the victims to come forward and file a complaint, and this kind of a provision is going to demotivate them further. Afrida.
All right. Yes, thanks, Santhya, for joining us and giving us a sense of what's happening right now in the Assembly. The bill is yet to be discussed. Let me bring in my colleague Avni Raja to take us through the main provisions of this bill and to help us understand precisely what we are talking about when we say that there are stricter provisions now. Avni, the highlights of the draft Shakti Act 2020, take us through the points, please.
Well, that's right. Let's look at what this bill is actually proposing and how it intends to make things much more stringent when it comes to such crimes. So first off, this bill, in fact, we'll just pull that up for you. Tougher punishment for heinous crimes against women is essentially the main objective of this particular bill, and what it proposes, it seeks to fast-track probe trials in a time-bound manner, and that is something that the bill proposes as well. Special courts and probe teams for such cases will be used as well. That is the other highlight of this particular bill. A 15-day time limit for investigation into the crime. That is also what the bill actually proposes as well. A provision for a 7-day extension for probe into the crime. So in case it is needed, there is a provision for an extension as well. But the trial has to be completed within a month from the charge sheet. So essentially, every effort being taken here to speed up the process. Special instructions for support services to the victims. Also, this is again something that the bill really proposes. These are really some of the important highlights. Set up a women and child offenders registry as well. This is also the other important point that the bill actually proposes. Those are the highlights as far as this bill is concerned, Afrida.
Right. Avni, thanks for joining us. And pointing out to us the important provisions. Of course, this bill is going to be debated in the Assembly. I am going to now introduce my guests this afternoon. I have Mahesh Tapse, spokesperson of the NCP, and Tuhin Sinha, leader of the BJP, joining us here on The Big Story. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here in Mirna and for giving us your time. I want to ask you, Mahesh Tapse, that of course this bill is being opposed by the opposition parties, but even if we set politics aside, the interesting part is activists, lawyers, and many other people who are actually working in the field of women and child development are opposed to your bill. This is supposed to be towards the interest of reducing crime against women and children. Why are so many organizations, and you must be aware, 28 organizations, including legal professions, social activists and professors, have written to the Chief Minister and to the Women and Child Development Ministry as well as the Law Ministry, saying that this bill should not be implemented. This has not become the law yet, but they have some very strong reservations when it comes to the issue of consent, issue of false cases, and they question what was the need for this additional provision to be brought in when your existing laws also not being enforced properly. The issue of death penalty is a big bone of contention, and the way you have shrunk the time frame, which many believe is not realistically possible for the investigating agencies to complete an investigation in 15 days and for the trial court to dispose it off in a month. Are you aiming for the moon? Isn't this over-ambitious, Mr. Tapse?
To secure the safety of the women of the state and to call it slightly over-ambitious, I do not know how to react to it. I can understand the apprehension in the mind of certain NGOs with regards to the implementation of the law. All these things are quite debatable, and I'm sure that the Home Minister and the entire Maharashtra government is very open to suggestions if the civil society or the NGOs working in women and child have concrete to offer. I want to spell two things very clear. A, that our government is very, very clear on the safety of women. Heinous crimes against women will not be tolerated.
Okay, I think I've lost the audio connection. I'm sorry, Mahesh Tapse, we'll just connect to you. Tuhin Sinha, I think I should allow you, because even though I have read the provisions and I have my reservations against certain provisions myself, but I would want you to tell us what is your objection to it, and why is it that you have to oppose any move that is being taken towards restricting crime against women? Why can't there be a consensus on these matters? This is not an issue where you should be daggers drawn with the current government. You could have always extended your healthy cooperation and perhaps suggestions to whatever you think is not working with this bill.
So, Afrida, if you recall, in 2018, the central government, our central government, had passed the Criminal Law Amendment Act, wherein the minimum punishment for those convicted of rape was increased to 10 years, and in case the victim was a minor, the punishment was increased to a death sentence. So let there be no ambiguity or confusion insofar as our commitment towards taking the right steps to reduce crimes against women are concerned. Now, coming to this particular bill, which has been tabled by the Maharashtra government, the way this Maharashtra government operates, it relies heavily on gimmicks without having substantial or even adequate knowledge of the subjects on which the bills are tabled. Now, point number one, and mind you, these have been pointed out by the NGOs and NGOs fighting for women's rights and by lawyers, and we are only supporting these. Now, the most prominent objection is that it changes the very definition of section 375 of the Indian Penal Code. Now, which means that consent in this case would be of a very different, would be defined by a very different explanation. Read some of these objections. The bill seeks to add an explanation that when adults are involved and the circumstances point to consent or implied consent, a presumption of consent will be made. It negates the entire definition of consent presently existing under the law. And mind you, that is very dangerous, which in effect means that the definition of consent will be as whimsical as many of the actions of this MVA government has been. Number two, it actually feeds into the patriarchal construction of consent conduct of women, which, women rights activists and which we have been fighting against. So it's a self-defeating bill, it's a gimmick to deflect attention from the unending failures of the government. I wish the state government of Maharashtra had been more forthcoming and discussed it well with us, because they really have no experience of government, and most of the things they do are.
I take your point. Yes. Yes. You're raising a very important point on the issue of consent, and I intended to raise that myself, but you've said that, you know, the way it clashes with the existing section of rape, section 375, does not align with the definition of rape, because there is a certain variance with the issue of consent. I would like to bring in my colleague Avni Raja to also help us understand that which are the main bones of contention. Avni, over to you.
Yes, absolutely, Afrida. I just want to very quickly put out, you know, the main opposition here to some of the provisions or what this bill actually proposes, and then perhaps you can get the panelists to respond to some of these points. So let's start with the first one here. The draft law proposes death for heinous crimes. Now, what people who are opposing say that this will promote murder of victims. So even if there's a chance that the victim might get saved, the life could get saved, it says that they say that they could end up getting murdered itself. The draft law proposes a 1-year jail term for false complaints. Now, opposition to this bill says that it will discourage victims to seek justice, and it might stop them from going out and talking about what happened. The draft law also proposes that it presumes implied consent among adults. This is the point that you were just talking about. The opposition to the bill says that it will negate the definition of consent altogether. The next point here is that the completion of the probe within 15 working days. It says that it will force cops into a hurried probe and may, not have the right details as far as the probe itself is concerned if that the probe has happened in a hurried manner. So, Afrida, those are some of the reasons as to why there is an opposition to this bill.
Yes. Thanks, Avni, for joining us. Mahesh Tapse is back with us. Mr. Tapse, on the point of consent, this is very dangerous, by the way. We cannot be playing with fire in this case, because on the point of consent, it's a very delicate matter to be playing around with the definition of consent and to say that, okay, such and such thing will be considered implied consent. Those who oppose the bill say that this negates the definition of consent and by inference also redefines rape. Now, this is a very dangerous territory that you are getting into. How would you justify this particular provision on consent? And who did you consult when you came up with this?
First of all, let me tell Mr. Sinha that my government is quite experienced in handling the affairs of the government. It's only 5 years that they were in power in the state of Maharashtra. As far as the law is concerned, it's not coming out of the minds of any one individual. It's been highly debated. There are bureaucrats who are framing the provisions of the law. And again, objections and suggestions to the current law and current bill is also asked from the society. I'm sure there are a lot of suggestions and there are a lot of objections to it. But when the bill is going to become a law, let the opposition raise their valid points as far as this particular section is concerned on the floor of the House. The Honorable Minister in charge, I'm sure he will be able to to placate all their views. And if it's not there, then there are ways. See, what is the idea? The idea is to stop the crimes. Idea is not the death penalty. We don't want the crime against the women in the first place. Now, we are here to try to stop the person from making any such kind of crime against the women. So that is the whole idea, and people can be made to realize that if you do such and such thing, then the penalty is very, very high. You might lose your life, and if it stops from the act, that is what we want to achieve.
All right, I take your point that the idea is to create deterrence. The idea is to bring in a strong law to instill fear in the minds of those potential offenders, potential rapists, and those perverts, which we often report about how these crimes happen with such audacity because there is no fear of the law. So your point is that is the whole idea, and it is open to debate. Now, this time, you're on the other side, but at least you still have scope to discuss the bill. It's not been imposed like you did with the farm laws. So tell us, what exactly are you opposing in terms of the fact that even this bill is based on the Disha bill, which was introduced in Andhra Pradesh, and there has been quite a few cases that under this new act of the Disha Act, so many penalties and punitive action has been taken by law enforcement. Why shouldn't there be more stringent provisions and stricter laws? Why don't you give this bill a chance to operate?
No, absolutely. There should be stricter laws. But like I said, you can't change the existing definition of rape on its head, because then you're entering into a very dangerous territory. You are actually bringing in a very amateurish bill, the whole objective of which is to score brownie points and not to, curb law, curb rape. Secondly, all of these provisions, whether it is the definition of consent which has been turned on its head, whether it is the patriarchal construction of consent which is being promoted in the bill, all of these are going to lead to massive underreporting of crime. Destruction of evidence is going to be a big problem, which even your correspondent was suggesting. And finally, actions speak louder than words. I'm sure you are aware that there are some very grievous charges which have been leveled against the sitting Palghar MP. What action has the state government taken against him?
Okay, let me put that to Mahesh Tapse, and we need to wind up. Mr. Tapse, answer the question that Mr. Sinha raised. I also want to ask you that there is a very real fear about the time frame that you have said, and I want you to respond to this, because this can always lead to a botched up investigation. When you set a time frame of 15 days for investigation, 1 month for trial, and where is the infrastructure in the judiciary to facilitate this kind? Where are the fast track courts? Without having that kind of infrastructure support, how can you bring in provisions of this nature, knowing very well that you do not have that kind of support and paraphernalia to make this kind of a law operate in Maharashtra?
As far as the investigation is concerned, it's going to be conducted by the police department, and the police department, they are well aware of the provisions of the bill.
I'm not able to, yes. Okay, I'm extremely sorry. I'm not able to hear Mr. Tapse, but I do understand that it is well-intentioned, just like the BJP argues for the farm laws. Here again, the idea is to create deterrence. The idea is to make it a fast-track process to punish those guilty of sexual crimes. The numbers are steadily on the rise over the years in terms of crime against women and children, and this particular bill also focuses on acid attack victims. So yes, this focus is necessary, this thrust is necessary, but whether the process and the procedure adopted at this point, whether that can hold through, because activists, lawyers, and several other social activists who are working in this field are not happy with the provisions. Let's hope that there is a healthy debate in the Assembly. Thank you so much, Tuhin Sinha and Mahesh Tapse, for joining us this afternoon.